Talking about college essay writing is one of my very favorite things to do. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity. I'm going to share my screen so that we can move through some slides. Again, my name is Sue Corner. I'm the Director of Recruitment at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. So my contact information is here. If anyone has questions that don't get answered during our session and you need to contact me or would like to ask questions about other aspects of the application process or about Willamette specifically, I certainly hope you'll be in touch because I would love to be of service to you. So tonight we're going to talk about essay writing, and in this hour we're going to cover what role does the essay play in the application process? Why do we ask for that, and what's the purpose? What are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to the application essay? I've been reading essays for a really long time, reading applications for a really long time. I've read thousands and thousands of them, and I've kind of established this list of things that you really should and should not do. So I'll share some of those with you. And then I think the best part of this workshop, I do this workshop a lot, and I think the part that people really like the best is we're just gonna kind of have some story time. I'm gonna read a couple of essays that I've saved over the years, actual application essays that I think have been really effective. So we're gonna answer that question, what does a really effective essay sound like? And we'll talk about that a little bit. Because we're not in an interactive format, normally I would ask you to respond to the essays and see what you like. I'll just give feedback of the things that I like, and then we'll give opportunity throughout the hour to ask questions and clarify things as we go. Okay, so just to start out, what role does the essay play in the application? Why do we ask for this thing? Well, it really has two main purposes. Your essay is an academic measure of your preparation for college. So one of the things that that I think everyone who's assessing any application is looking for is this applicant a good academic fit for our institution? And that measure can look different, obviously, from place to place, depending on the standards and just atmosphere of the different institutions. But that essay serves as a way of understanding your writing ability, your thinking ability, the way that you choose to communicate to others. It really does act as an academic piece of the puzzle for us. So that's a critical part of the process. We want to see your very best writing. We want to see that you know how to use punctuation and grammar. All of those things are an important part of the essay. The other side of that coin is that the essay helps us understand who you are and what's important to you. So it's this window into who you are that feels different than the other parts of the application. So really the essay is serving both of those purposes. Often people, when we're talking about the essay, people will ask, does it really matter? You know, is anybody really going to read it, or do you just gloss over it? We know you don't have a lot of time for every single application file, so are you really going to read the whole thing? And I would say it definitely matters. Yes, it matters, and it matters for different institutions in different ways. But as I was mentioning before, this is an academic assessment tool. Looking at this piece of writing is a way that we understand your academic preparation. So for instance, if I'm looking at an application file and I am looking at the transcript to try to assess whether the student is a good match for Willamette, whether their college preparation is there to the degree that we need to see it to feel confident that we're making a good match. I'm looking at that transcript and I'm just not sure. I think that applicant might be kind of on the margin for us, and I don't ever want to set someone up for failure. So I'm really trying to understand their preparation. If the transcript isn't giving me a clear picture, the very next place I turn is the essay. It is the next most important indicator. Not test scores anymore, not for us and not for lots of institutions, especially in this year where test scores have been so hard to access, or tests have been hard to access. So that essay really is important for that reason. And then it can really be the tipping point. If I am unsure about that transcript, I turn to the essay, and it's this really well thought out, well written piece of writing. It shows me that the student knows what they're doing. They've given me some insight into who they are, and I have a better picture of their personality and what's important to them. All of that can absolutely tip them into the admit bin, as opposed to potentially the waitlist or the deny bin. So the essay matters. I would say too, for places, you know, Willamette is a selective institution. We get to say yes to a lot of students, but certainly not all of our applicants. For institutions that are even more selective, you know, for those places where the poor admissions staff have to say no to the vast majority of people who apply, I think in cases like that, the essay really matters also, because they have to look at absolutely everything to make a determination as to whether that person really should go into that 5% of people who are being admitted. So the essay matters. Also, the essay is really unique within the application file. If you think about what we're looking at when we're looking at a standard application, whether it's the common application, which is what we use at Willamette, or an institution-specific application that just pertains to one college that you're applying to, either way, the credentials that we all ask for are generally pretty similar. You know, we asked for some biographical information. Who are you? Where are you from? What's your family like? You know, where do you go to school? Some of those things. We asked for a list of classes that you're currently taking. We asked for transcripts so we can see kind of a list of classes that you've already taken and the grades that you've received. Sometimes we ask for test scores, not everyone, but test scores can be in there. We asked for a couple of letters. We asked for a list of activities. And all of those things are really important in helping us understand who you are. All of those things looked at holistically and in combination help us paint a picture for your preparation, for your goals, again, for what kind of fit you might be with our institution. So all of those pieces of the puzzle are really important. But when you think about those things, with the exception of the recommendation letters, the rest of those credentials are very, they're very list-like. They're kind of lots of data points, you know, grades, a list of classes, a list of activities. It's lots of just small bits of information. Again, very important information, but they're kind of these lists. And then we get to the essay, and it's like you started talking to us. It's like you come through in this different way than every other piece in the application. It's by far the most personal part of the application in my experience. Again, having read thousands of applications, this is the piece that just feels different than all of the other components. So it's an incredibly unique opportunity for us to give us insight into who you are and to further help us understand the context from which you're coming to us as an applicant. So that makes it really unique and really special, and something that you want to take your time with and do your best work on. So let me pause for just a second and see, after that just little initial round of information. Derek, are there any questions that have come in yet?
Of course. All right, the first one is, how do we know when to stop thinking and start writing?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And actually, I'm going to address this a little bit in the do's and don'ts. I think people spend way too much time thinking about their topic rather than just getting started and writing. So I would say, if you're still thinking, it's time to start writing. If you're an applicant, you know, for this fall, I think you should stop thinking about it and start writing now. People worry over what that topic should be and think that it's all important that they pick this very, very unique thing about them. And in fact, any topic works. It's the way you write about the topic that really is the most important thing. So you know, give it some thought, think of something that is important to you. I think it's one of those gut feelings, sort of the first thing that you think of is often the right thing for you to write about. So kind of go with that gut instinct and get to writing.
Fantastic, fantastic. Next question is, can we send you our personal statement essays so you can take a look for maybe some improvements?
I would love to say you can do that. It's not something that I should say yes to at this point in the application process. Just a little bit of a conflict of interest for anybody who might be an applicant to Willamette, and it's an incredibly busy time of year for me because I've already started to read applications for this year. So I have to say no to that. But again, I will say, trust your instinct on a good topic, because really there are so many things that you can write about. And when we get to the part of this where we're going to actually read a couple of essays, I think you'll maybe be able to get a sense of what you've come up with, whether it's the right thing for you. Hopefully that will add some clarity.
Fantastic. That's all for right now.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on to the second section, which are my do's and don'ts when it comes to your application essay. And there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to this. This is just sort of, again, things that I've collected over the years, things that I've seen that have worked or not worked for applicants. So we'll move through these. So the first one is almost funny. Do write the essay yourself. It doesn't seem like that should need to be said. You know, it's your essay. Of course you should write it. But we hear about things like varsity blues. We know that there are parents who are so eager to help that they overstep their boundaries. We know that sometimes students panic and lose confidence in what they are preparing, and so they get far more help than they should. So it just needs to be said. The essay needs to be written yourself. And again, with a clear understanding that it will be read and it could affect your admission decision. So the don't that goes in along with that is don't allow anyone else to write or significantly change your essay. One of the primary purposes of this essay is to understand you and have your voice come through. The other primary purpose is to assess your writing ability. So if someone else is doing the work for you or significantly changing your writing, we're losing both of those main purposes and could, you know, really mismatch you with an institution for all the wrong reasons. So, so really it's important to be very genuine and have this work be your own. Do have someone you trust proofread your essay for you. So help with small, you know, grammatical and punctuation errors. Those things are absolutely fine to have help with. That is not the same thing as having someone else write for you. But having someone else, another set of eyes, take a look at this important piece of writing, that is absolutely something you should do. It's very apparent when we read an essay that has not been proofread at all, when there are glaring, you know, spelling or punctuation or capitalization errors. Those kinds of things are the easiest thing to clean up, especially if you have a fresh set of eyes look at this piece of writing for you. So it's really important to have those things cleaned up. And you just need to ask someone you trust to do that for you. Don't wait until, you know, 11 p.m. before a midnight deadline to complete your essay, because when you rush like that and you're hurrying to get it in, that's almost always when sloppy work is going to come through, and when those errors, when you've not left yourself time to have someone else proofread, and those errors will be included. You know, when I'm reading an essay and I see errors, sometimes I make assumptions. You know, if there are too many of those little things that could have easily been cleaned up with some proofreading, I sometimes think, gosh, does this student, maybe they're not a good time manager, and so they waited until too late and they rushed and they didn't have time for that help. And so maybe they're a bad time manager, and that's going to make it hard for them to manage themselves in college. So that can be a little red flag. Or I might think, gosh, maybe the writing ability just isn't there. Maybe they don't have the foundational skills in writing that we would expect because they've let these errors come through. So that's a worry. Or sometimes I might think, they didn't work very hard on this piece of writing. Maybe they're just not that interested in Willamette. Maybe you know, they kind of dashed this off and sent off the application because this really isn't this isn't a priority application for them. And that, you know, that doesn't necessarily inspire me to make a positive admission decision. So none of those assumptions may be correct. Just because a piece of writing isn't strong, it might not mean any of those things. You might be a great time manager. You might be very interested in Willamette. You might, you know, you might be a very good writer, but we can assume some of those things to not be true if you let these errors come through. So you just really want to make sure you take time to clean them up. So here's the topic question. Do choose the topic that allows you to stand out and to tell a story that's important to you and gives us some insight into who you are and is really authentic to who you are. It's important that you're trying to set yourself apart a little bit with this piece of writing. That's one of the things that you hope to do. You know, when I come into the office on a morning after maybe spending the day before reading applications all day, I might come in and say to a colleague, hey, did you have a chance to look at Sally, is that the one who wrote about motorcycles? You know, they will connect their memory of an application file with the essay topic or with what the person wrote about. So the essay is what makes you stand out. The way you write about something, the way you tell your story is what helps you stand out. So you do want to think about that topic. But you don't want to spend weeks and weeks and weeks agonizing about it. All topics are okay. I mean, really, I've read about everything. I get questions every year about, should I write about this? Is that too personal? Or should I write about that? You know, we've read it all. Anybody who's been doing this for any length of time has read about an awful lot. And it's really not so much about the topic itself. It is the way you tell the story, your story about that topic. And again, I think when I read a couple of these applications, you'll see what I mean by that. Do answer the prompt. That seems straightforward, but sometimes people will lose sight of the prompt as they get writing. And I think it is important to answer the question that is being put before you. On the Common application, there are lots of prompts to choose from. They're very broad, so I think it's reasonable to expect that you answer the prompt. And then I think you should be mindful of the word count. You know, depending on the length that you're given, whether it's the Common App or another application, you'll be given a word count or a suggested length. And I don't think you should pad your essay just to, you know, get to a certain word count. I don't think you should add extra things that aren't important just to make it longer. But at the same time, I think you need to remember that it's very common for us when we're reading applications to read in succession. You know, I might read 15 or 20 applications in a day, one after another. And it's noticeable when you know, most of them are about a page, and then you get to the one that's half a page. It sort of is this abrupt, oh gosh, this doesn't feel the same. And it's not that we're necessarily comparing one to another, but it might read as, oh, again, were they rushed? Did they not really want to take the opportunity to use this piece as a way to tell us more about them? So, you know, I think you should be mindful of that opportunity and the length of the essay and you know, work toward that. And then don't reuse a piece of writing you've written for class or you've written for another purpose. Now, I know on the Common application, one of the prompts does say, write an essay about anything you want, even if it's something you've written before. Go ahead and submit that. So the Common App folks might disagree with this don't of mine, but I will tell you, you can almost always tell when a student is using as their essay a piece of writing that they've done for class. It's often a persuasive piece, but you can tell there's something about that writing that comes through as different than a personal statement that's really just been written for their college application. And what usually happens is it almost always fulfills that purpose of being a good academic measure of their writing ability. It's usually very cleaned up. It's, you know, if somebody's going to pick a piece of writing they've done, they're going to pick something that they got a good grade on, you know, that they worked on until it was perfected and then they turned it into their teacher. So, you know, it's going to be very clean. It's not going to have any errors. It's going to look great, but it almost always leaves out that other purpose of the essay, which is the personal part. It rarely reads as an insight into who you are, what's important to you, what your goals are. Those pieces of you that just can't tend to come through in the essay and that we look for usually aren't there in a piece that you've written for another class. So my recommendation is don't use that kind of piece. If you really want us to see a piece of writing like that, take the time to look up your admission counselor at the schools that are most important to you, and send an email. I love it when a student does that and they send me an email that says, hey Sue, I'm working on my Common App, it's not in yet, but I also wanted to send you this piece of writing that I did for my history class because I was really proud of how well this paper turned out and I just thought you might like to see it. And they attach it and they send it to me and I think, wow, this is terrific. This is a heads up applicant who cares enough about their application to Willamette to take this extra step. They've just made a connection with me. So when I do get to that point of reading their application, I'm going to think, oh yeah, this is that great student who took that extra time. They really are organized. They're on top of things. They're a good writer. You know, all of these positive things are going to come of that. So use a separate piece of writing in that way. Don't use it as your actual application essay. Do think about all the ways that you can provide context within your essay. And again, I think this will come through when we read an essay. There are ways to slip lots of details about yourself and your life into an essay. And I love it when a student does that, when they kind of pack in lots of things that help me understand them. That word context really has so much to do with what the application process is about. We just really want to understand you as a person and as a student. And so you can slip lots of things into that essay that help us understand you. And then this don't is kind of funny, but don't mention a specific school within your Common Application essay. If you are using the Common Application, the essay is part of the Common part. So all of the parts of the Common App that are common get sent to all of the schools that you apply to that accept the Common Application. Each Common App school also has one page that is just specific to them, where they can ask some separate questions that are just their questions. But all of the rest is common. So invariably, every year, I will be reading through applications and I'll get to someone who has written this lovely essay, and at the end they say something like, in conclusion, that is why I am so excited to attend Pomona. You know, and I'll shed a little tear because I'm not Pomona. And it's hurt my feelings just a little bit that you've mentioned Pomona, your love for Pomona in your essay. I think sometimes students either misunderstand that the essay is common to all of their Common App schools, or sometimes students will think, well, I'm applying to Pomona on the Common Application and they're my only Common App school, so it's okay for me to put this in my essay. And then it's not at all uncommon for the college list to evolve even as the senior year is happening. And a student might, sometime later in the fall or early winter, even before the final deadline, they might discover another Common App school and think, oh my gosh, I didn't know about this place. I'm now pretty interested. And they take the Common App. I can submit it because I've already completed my Common App. So I'm just going to send that off. That's great. That's part of why the Common App works. However, you've written an essay that was specific to one place. So you really want to make sure that your essay works on the Common Application specifically for not just one school that you might apply to, but any that might come up as your search evolves. It's not that it's the end of the world. I mean, we've admitted people who have mentioned another school before, but it's not ideal. It's not what we're looking for. Okay, let's pause there for a second before we get to story time. Derek, have there been any other questions that have come up?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, let's go to the first one. All right, can you give some tips on how to have your thoughts come across clearly while we write?
You know, one of the things that I think is really effective, and this may come through when I read these essays, I think it's really helpful to hear something read aloud. So I think, you know, everybody's writing process is a little bit different, but I think you need to get something on paper, you need to spend some time with it, whatever your process is. And then I think you either need to read it aloud to yourself, or in many cases, better yet, have someone read it aloud to you. And you'll be able to then hear where they're, you know, misinterpreting how you wanted it to sound. You may be able to hear where the punctuation isn't right, or where a word is used too repetitively. I think hearing it read aloud is very different than just reading and rereading something that you're working on so hard while you're writing it yourself. So I would highly suggest that you have someone read to you your drafts, so that you can really edit them with an understanding of how they sound when they're read aloud. I think that can add a great deal of clarity to your writing. That would be number one.
Fantastic. So what's the most important part of the essay?
Well, the whole essay is important. I mean, it's a cohesive piece, so I think the whole thing is important. And I think those two main goals that we've talked about are key. You know, it has to be good writing, and it has to give us an insight into who you are. So those things are important. I do think the first part of the essay, you know, the first sentence or the first paragraph, is pretty critical. You want to capture the attention of the reader. I think this is true with most things that you write. You want to find a way to make that reader want to keep reading. And so I think thinking hard about how you start the essay is pretty important, so that the reader feels drawn in and wants to continue to hear the rest of your story. I think the tone too is important, in that you know, it needs to flow in a way that keeps the reader's attention throughout. So I think you'll hear when I read this essay, the kind of the storytelling nature. If you can adopt something that kind of feels like you're telling a story, almost like you're talking to us. I love it when that can be achieved, because that really does make me want to read the whole thing.
Fantastic. What if there are a few defining moments in your life that you feel would be worth writing about in an essay?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing. That's a good problem to have, I think, because again, a lot of students really agonize over what should I write about, and they often don't feel like they have a defining moment or a big special thing. You know, a lot of 17-year-olds haven't necessarily been through something that is so entirely unique to them that they can define it. So to have a few things like that, that's a really good problem. I would say, again, what's your gut feeling? When you very first started thinking about writing your college essay, what was the first thing that came to mind? And I suspect that might be the one that you should choose. I think we kind of have this instinct for this sort of thing, and it's often the very first thought. So I might consider that. And then again, just get started. Don't agonize. Don't spend forever thinking about it. Make a choice and then get going telling the story.
Good. So what elements should I emphasize in an essay as someone who's wanting to transfer to a university?
Well, that's a great question. Sometimes, you know, sometimes the questions are different, or the prompts are different for a transfer student. I think on the Common application, it allows you to talk really about, it's less about kind of telling a story or writing an essay. It's more about why do you want to transfer? Why is this a pivotal moment in your life to be making this change? And so, you know, I think focusing on that, it's sort of the transfer experience often just is different than the first year experience. And so I think really thinking hard about what your reasoning is, what your circumstances are. Again, the context piece comes through very importantly with a transfer student. So I think focusing on your goals and why this is a critical time for you to be transferring, I think that's kind of what you want to focus on.
Good, 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 good. So how do we streamline the ideas we have and make sure that the essay isn't too dense and clunky?
Again, hear it read aloud, have someone read it to you, and you'll be able to tell if you need to weed something out. You shouldn't go over the word count. So if it's too much, if it's too long, if it's too heavy, that often will push you past the suggested word count. So you want to stay within that, definitely. And I don't know, I suppose you could get feedback from another person, someone that you trust, a friend or a parent, and read it to them and see if they feel like it's too heavy or it's too much. I do think eliciting an emotional response is a wonderful thing to have happen with your essay. If you can write in a way that makes me laugh out loud, or makes me cry a little bit, or helps me feel like, wow, I just learned something by reading that essay, that's all a wonderful goal. That makes your essay stand out. That makes you as an applicant stand out. So feeling like you, like there's feeling in the essay, or that it elicits feeling, is a really good thing. So if you're feeling like it's dense or too much or too heavy, read it with an eye for that idea of what emotion is this evoking. And if it's too clunky to do that, then you need to look for ways to streamline it. You need to take out words that are too much. You need to streamline ideas.
Fantastic. As a matter of fact, you answered the next question as well. So I'll move on to the next one. And this is just a simple, what is the Common App?
Oh, God. I'm talking all about the Common Application and it's not clear what that is. So thank you for asking that. The Common Application is exactly what it sounds like. It is an application form that is used by a number of different colleges. So it's common to lots of schools. I think there are more than 900 colleges in the US that accept the Common Application. It was designed way back in the day for students who were, handwriting their applications and doing so 5, 6, 7 times over to different schools, filling out all of these different application forms, and really putting most of the same information on each of these institutions' specific applications. And so the Common App was formed to make the application process more streamlined for students, to save time for these busy seniors in their senior year to not have to fill out separate forms for every single college they're applying to. So if you search commonapp.org, the website will come up. You can create a little free account that allows you to see what the Common App includes. It'll allow you to see which schools accept the Common Application. And there's actually some ways to do some college searching within the Common App as well. So it's a really good tool. And again, it's something that so many students end up in the course of their college application process applying to at least one Common Application school. So it's important to know about.
Fantastic. That's all we have right now.
Great. Okay, it's story time. This is just, what does a really effective essay sound like? I want to read this to you. You can close your eyes. You can do whatever you need to do to just really listen. And then again, normally I would ask for feedback, have people kind of tell me what you like about this, but that doesn't work as well in our format tonight. So we'll read through it and then I'll tell you the things that stood out to me. I'll tell you why I like it and what some audiences in the past have told me about this essay that they really like, why it's effective. So the prompt for this one is discuss an accomplishment or event, formal or informal, that marked your transition from childhood to adulthood within your culture, community, or family. And at the top of this essay, the student writes social capital, and then with the word noun in parentheses. So it's kind of like a dictionary definition. And then they say, the network of social connections that exist between people and their shared values, which enable and encourage mutually advantageous social cooperation. I grew up in Meeker, Colorado, a Rocky Mountain town of 2,500 people. Both of my parents' families were community cornerstones, holding high social capital. My dad's family ran the local grocery store, and my mom's a reputable cattle operation. My siblings too graduated from Meeker High School, meaning everyone expected me to become a 3-sport varsity athlete, get involved in church and charity work, and maintain a perfect GPA as they had done. Had the setting been different, none of it would have mattered. But from an early age, it felt like I was expected to write the next chapter in a multi-generational legacy. As media stereotypes would suggest, high school was the catalyst for fame in my small town. But the summer before my freshman year, my parents decided to move 1,200 miles northwest to Scio, Oregon. We packed our belongings, bringing everything with us except the reputation and tradition of the family name. As we left the city limits, I felt almost naked. Starting a new life with a clean slate proved difficult. On the first day of school, it surprised me when my classmates didn't save a spot for me in the front of the classroom, and my teachers asked if I felt comfortable reading aloud. At home in Meeker, everyone knew I had always worked hard to be an exceptional student. On that day began the hardest test I'd ever faced. Never before had I experienced the lows of loneliness and homesickness. Like a sailor thrown overboard in choppy water, I plunged into high school with 2 clear choices. Trying to fit in by being someone I wasn't felt worse than drowning. To be myself, an athlete, scholar, fun-loving weirdo, was tough. But when I worked up the courage, it was like learning to save myself from the rough seas, and I chose to swim. Even today, midway through my senior year, it continues to be challenging to act authentically and craft the legacy that I desire. I've learned that my reputation at school can't be formed with words. Rather, it's defined by my actions. Whether those actions include being the most rambunctious fan at the football games, leading the school as the student body president, or studying to ace the semester finals, they all contribute to the formation of a reputation I'm proud of. There's a photo of me from the day my family moved from Colorado. I'm sitting on the tailgate of our pickup truck, a floppy-haired kid, smiling hard to conceal the uneasiness I felt. Next to that picture sits a proof for my senior photos. I've grown 6 inches, filled out, but the most shocking difference is how comfortable I look, sporting my favorite purple shirt, the smoothness of my brow, the void of tension, and the gratitude-filled grin painted across my face. My journey to the Northwest has served as the bridge from childhood, over the waters of adolescence, and into adulthood. It's been more profound than any event in my lifetime. Here I find myself again on the brink of another big move from high school to college. Last time I had no say in the matter, but the benefit of being thrown from my comfort zone was nothing but positive and formative. This time, I'm not only excited, but ready. I know who I am, I know what I want, and I can't wait to make it happen. So this is where I normally would say, what did you like about this? What did you think? Usually I finish reading it and people kind of nod and smile and they really like this essay. I'll tell you some of the
things. That was really good too.
Good. Some of the things that I like, there is a storytelling quality to this essay that it just flows. It really is just like the student is talking to me about this experience, and I can hear it when it's read aloud. I just feel like it flows in a way that's really, really lovely. I think this student did a great job of packing in all kinds of details that give me extra clues about who they are in the context of this story. They say things like, you know, I worked hard to ace the semester finals. I was the student body president. My family values church and charity work. I have older siblings. There's just all these little things that get packed in that help paint this picture of who he is. And I love that he took the time and effort to do that.
So we have two quick questions if you got time to slide them in.
Sure. Go ahead.
What if we want to write about a niche cultural thing that may be alienating to the reader? Is it worth taking the time to explain the thing we want to talk about if it's important to us?
That's a great question. I think if it's important to you, you should write about it. I think if it's the thing that your gut feeling is telling you you should write about, then I think you should. But if it isn't something that the reader is going to understand, you need to find a way to make the story incorporate that explanation. It may not need to be a very long one. It may just need a few defining sentences, but you do want to make sure that it's understood by the reader. Now, I don't think you need to worry about alienating someone. Again, we read about topics that are all over the place. They're, you know, politically, culturally, socially, emotionally, they're all over the spectrum. And so I think you should feel comfortable writing about who you are and what's important to you. I hope that answers that question.
Most definitely. I'll fill this one in real quick as well.
Okay.
Should our essay be like a story like the one that you read, or us mentioning various details like extracurricular activities that we did?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, this is, maybe everyone wouldn't answer this in the same way, but I feel like we get an insight into who you are when it's a little bit more of a story. Just listing things at your involvement or sort of writing a persuasive commentary on what you've done often doesn't add a whole lot of extra dimension. We have a list of your extracurricular pursuits in the essay, and you should take time to make that really thorough and complete. But that's where we learn about, you know, really that list of activities. It's fine if some of those things are reiterated in the essay through the story that you're telling. Those things might be included a little bit, but they shouldn't just be another list of what you've been involved in. We have that already. You want to make the most of every opportunity in your application. And so not being overly repetitive is really important.
Fantastic. So, sorry. I'm sorry.
No.
You're good. That's all we have for right now.
Okay. So just a couple more things that I thought were really effective in this first essay. You know, this student includes some imagery in the middle of it. They kind of throw a little writing device in there where they talk about, you know, they were thrown into the rough seas and sink or swim. They chose to swim. And then at the very end, they come back to that kind of same imagery and talk about the move being the bridge from childhood to adulthood. So that's a really nice writing device. You don't have to have it, but I think it showed some really nice ability. I also think the way that he came back at the end and kind of restated the prompt, you know, again, you don't have to do this either, but he did it in a beautiful way by saying, you know, this move was the bridge from childhood to adulthood, over the waters of adolescence and into adulthood. And that's exactly what the prompt was asking for. So he fit that in very, very nicely. I think when I read this, the language used is very straightforward. He's not using a vocabulary that's really elevated. He's not doing something here that isn't accessible to most high school seniors. He just clearly has taken time to hone and perfect this story in a way that is really nice. I love that he's vulnerable. I think vulnerability coming through in an essay is a really lovely thing. Again, it makes me feel like I'm making a connection to that person and getting an insight into who they are. His ability to say, this was really lonely and scary for me, and it was hard to be authentic and to know, who my friends would be. All of that is really appealing because it shows this vulnerability. And then the topic, sometimes I ask people, so what's the topic here? and sometimes people will say, well, it's that social capital idea that was at the beginning. And that's true. Although I really think when you boil it down, the topic of this essay is this student's move. He moved. That's the topic. It's really not that unusual. It's a fairly common experience for lots of people. And yet he writes about the move in a way that's really self-reflective and emotionally moving to me as the reader. So again, I think this demonstrates the point that it's less about the topic itself and more how you choose to write about the topic. Okay, I think we have time to do one more quickly. So I'm going to read one more unless there's any other questions, Derek. Okay, so this one, the prompt is, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? I wasn't always at peace with myself. When I was a kid, my favorite game to play was superheroes. My sister Rebecca and I would put on our dress-up capes and transform into Dogwoman and Glaceon, saviors of the universe. The nights where we teamed up with the neighborhood kids were especially exciting. Our villains couldn't stand a chance against the combined powers and friendship. We didn't need much, just our imaginations. In those easy days, it was easy to pretend I was invincible. When I wasn't putting out fires and blasting bad guys, I was the gifted student. Everywhere I heard it, from my teachers, church members, even the ladies at my mom's book club. You must be so proud of your Sarah. Such a smart, driven girl, they would say. She's going to outshine us all someday. And I did so want that to be true. Trying my hand at soccer, basketball, dance, theater, and the violin, year after year, I grew up very secure with the mentality that everything would always be like this. I had confidence, but the cheap kind, the temporary kind, the shiny new plastic half off with this coupon kind. It was handed to me, and I had yet to earn it. When I got to high school, everything changed. There were smarter kids, more talented kids, more popular kids. I started to gain weight after middle school's growth spurt, growing steadily more self-conscious about my chunky thighs and fleshy arms. Freshman year was the first true wake up, the first time I had to fight hard to keep my confidence, and also the year I experienced my first real taste of failure. That fall, I decided on a whim to join the swim team. I thought, I love to swim. This will be a good way to meet some people and conquer another new experience. I was completely unprepared for the grueling daily 3-hour workouts, short rests, and competitive spirit that awaited me upon joining the team. I knew I was a curvy girl who had a closer relationship with books and the stage than with the grind of sports. What was I thinking? How could I have believed that I was ready? I was consistently the slowest person on the team, and my failure initially drove me into the mentality of quitting. After one particularly rotten day, I had almost completely made up my mind. I was biking home from practice that chilly December evening, swim bag hitting my ankles, thinking about how lousy my flip turns were and that I would never be able to catch up to the other swimmers. What's wrong with me? I thought. Everything should have been perfect like it used to be. And as the rush of frustration started to cool down, I began to question it. Why? Why do I have to make every little thing I do better than everyone else? Why do I have to be the best to feel like I'm worth something? That evening, it was like something clicked in my head. I was good enough. Maybe I did lack power in my thick legs. Maybe I had to come up for air more often than the rest of the team. Maybe a graceful flip turn was something I'd only dreamed about executing. But after all that, I was good enough. And in the months and years following that night, I grew into someone I never would have imagined all those years ago playing in capes. I wasn't exceptionally gifted. I wasn't a prodigy, and I certainly wasn't invincible. But I had regained my confidence, and this time it was real. I had beaten the worst bad guy of all, my insecurity. And the next step is saving the world.
Good.
Okay.
All
Another.
right. All right. Quick question, Sue. What do you think the essay could have done better?
The first one that we read, what could have?
Yes, the first one.
Yeah. Well, I will say there are a couple of little punctuation errors in it. You can't see those, but I can see them as I read it. And they are things that are pretty straightforward. So I feel like even though I think it's an excellent piece of writing, I'm not sure that he had that extra set of eyes take a look at it, and it would have been great if he had cleaned up those couple of things. I think other than that, it's really effective. I don't see things about this that I want to correct because I think it accomplishes the purpose. It helped him stand out to me. It showed me that he is a thoughtful writer. It gave me insight into who he is and helped me understand his story. So I really don't see a lot that I can criticize there. And I'm not looking to criticize essays. I really want to like them all. I want them all to be fabulous because it's the best part of my day. When I'm spending a whole day reading applications, the essay is the favorite part of each one. And so I love it when they're great. So I'm looking for the best. I'm looking for the good in all of them. But sometimes there are things that could be improved. I think that one's awfully good. I think this one that we just read is awfully good too. You know, I think she clearly answers the prompt just as the first one did. She does a great job of thinking about that idea of success or failure, but she does it in a unique way, I think. She doesn't talk about, you know, failing an exam or losing a game or something like that. She thinks about failure in terms of self-confidence. And I like that she does that because it's very relatable. It's also, again, vulnerable. She puts some things out there that are a little bit vulnerable, and that makes me feel a sense of connection to her. I think she has a great, you know, we had talked about what part of the essay is most important, and that beginning piece is pretty important to draw in the reader. And I think she does a great job with that first part where she's talking about playing superheroes. You know, that's unique. I haven't read a lot of essays that speak about that. And I think it sets the tone that allows her to tie it in at the end to this idea of being invincible or a superhero. But it also just piques my interest. So it's kind of a nice hook at the beginning. I think she does something in this, I think actually both of these essays do, but kind of demonstrates where she was challenged and then she grew. And that's a really nice thing to be able to include if it fits with your topic and the story that you're telling. Kind of being able to be vulnerable about something that's a weak spot and then how you've kind of overcome that or shown growth. I think that can be very effective. I do think both of these essays end on really positive notes. Even though in the second one, she's talking about kind of a crisis of confidence and a tough time in her life. She ends on this really positive note that I think leaves the reader feeling good. And she, I think I misspelled dialogue there. She incorporates a little bit of dialogue, which is a nice, writing technique that sometimes it's just nice to see something a little bit creative like that included. So those are some of the things I like. If we had time, I would read some more because there are so many that are so good. And I do think getting to hear what a good essay sounds like is one of the best ways to start to really think about what your plan is and try to adapt some of the things that you already are working on, and incorporating some of these different qualities. Eric, are there any other questions?
No questions. You've answered them all. As a matter of fact, there were a couple, but you answered them as you were speaking. So you took care of them already.
Good, good.
Very good, very good.
Once again, I'll just say my name is there, my email address is there. I work at Willamette University, and I'm really happy. Again, I can't probably pre-read or give feedback on a specific essay that someone is thinking about right now, but I am happy to answer general questions about the application process or other parts of the college search. So please feel free to use me as a resource if you're looking for that.
Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. All right, you can, let's see, I think there's a lot of thank yous in the chat, so that's a very good thing.
Oh,
very
good.
good. Very good thing. Very good thing. All right.
Well, thanks to everybody for sitting in. I appreciate that there was an audience. I hope that some of what we had to talk about was helpful, and I wish everybody the best as you are continuing with your college search. This is a very strange year to be navigating a college search, and
Yes.
yeah, there are some hidden blessings in all of it. So I wish you all the best and hope it all goes well.